Welcome into Rounding the Bases.
Round the bases. Everybody knows Joe Goldberg. It's around the bases. Everybody knows Joe Goldberg.
Hey, everybody. Welcome into another episode of Rounding the Bases presented by Community America Credit Union, investing in you. I'm Joel Goldberg. Theme song. Sometimes I forget to mention this. It's been going for so long. Almost feel like I need to apologize sometimes because I'll have people say to me, that song, I can't get it out of my head. It's a fun song. The music, the lyrics, all of it, the creation of A.Y. Young, a previous guest on the show many years ago, was traveling around the world doing his thing. So anyway, I've got a great show for you today. As always, quick shout out to my friends at Chief of Staff Kansas City. Whether you're in Kansas City, whether you're in Atlanta like my guest today, or anywhere around the country for that matter, if you are in the market for a job, if you're in the market for trying to find the right fit, the right person, need a resource, just give them a call. Good, vibrant office of awesome people. I love to collaborate with them. So chiefofstaffkc.com, making connections that matter. One of the most fun things about doing this podcast, just like my baseball world, is that I get a chance to meet a lot of really interesting people with a lot of interesting stories. And that's the baseball world, by the way, too. I say all the time that I love having traveled with the Royals for so many years that you just meet the most interesting people, whether it be in the clubhouse, on the field, from the usher to the security guard to the clubby, to you name it. That's sort of the world, right? And then you see them over and over again. And so today's podcast really kind of marries a little bit of those worlds together, and nice and timely during baseball season. So on today's installment of Rounding the Bases, I'm joined by a son of Atlanta who is an unabashed catalyst for excellence. His name is C.J. Stewart, the co-founder and chief visionary officer at L.E.A.D Center for Youth, L.E.A.D, L.E.A.D Center for Youth. It's the undisputed MVP of sports-based development programs dedicated to empowering at-risk young men of color. In his relentless pursuit of purpose, this former MLB player has spent more than 2 decades shaping lives and breaking the cycles that are detrimental to success, instilling in an entire generation of boys, of young men, that where their story started is just the beginning. Only they can determine how it will end, despite the curveballs that come our way. Yes, we got curveball references, baseball references, but I think as I bring CJ into the podcast, that life is full of curveballs. I love to use that expression because you don't have to be able to hit a real curveball. You probably could do that a lot better than I ever could, but life throws you a lot of challenges in and outside of baseball. So with that said, CJ, welcome into Rounding the Bases.
Thank you so much for being here. And I did love that theme song. That was good.
It's good. It's catchy. And then my kids start singing it, and then they start giving me grief about it. Anyway, I love having that one out there. There's so much I want to talk to you about. I don't know where to begin because I could delve into so many issues. But I think what I want to start with is just tell me about what you're doing and what you've been doing for a long time, because I've met a lot of people in the course of my career like you that are just driven with a passion to make a difference, driven to pass on what you've learned. Tell me what you've been up to for all these years.
Yeah, so I'll start with the fact that the Latin word for passion is suffering. So if you can't articulate what you have suffered from or what you are currently suffering from, then I don't think you have permission to say that you're doing things with passion. And so, for me to be able to identify that passion, there are, speaking of rounding the bases, there are 4 questions that I went through a period of time several years ago where for 40 days I asked myself 4 questions. It was, CJ, what do you worry about? What do you cry about? What do you dream about? And what brings you joy? And so as a result of that, answering those questions, it positions me to do what I do today. We actually, Kelly and I, my wife, Kelly, we do 2 things. One, we have a for-profit business called Diamond Directors, where we provide the blueprint of success for diamond sport athletes. And so since 1998, we've developed 43 major leaguers, been a part of their development, including Peter Alonso, Kyle Lewis, Jason Hayward, and several others. And then in 2007, I had a very convicting moment that put me on an assignment to start L.E.A.D Center for Youth. a part of my for-profit business, Diamond Directors, one of my middle school age white clients, Davis Conway, his father, Stan Conway, changed my life one day. Stan said, CJ, three things. He said, you are a really good coach, but if you were as good as you said you were, your rates wouldn't be so low. He said, the good stuff always costs. And, you can't be the best and the cheapest at the same time. So that was strike one. I swung and missed that. And that wasn't even a curveball. That was a fastball. And then the second thing was, he said, if you was as good as you said you were, CJ, as a coach, it shouldn't be so easy for people to get access to you. And so people having just endless amount of access to you eventually just wears you out. And so you can't really focus on what you need to do. So swung and missed that. And then the third thing he said as a white man that changed my life in the creation of L.E.A.D is he said that there's a decline of blacks in baseball and you're not doing anything about it. And so that's when L.E.A.D Center for Youth was established, and we used the sport of baseball to help Black boys overcome 3 curveballs that threaten their success: crime, poverty, and racism. And I'll just say lastly to that point, the reason why that's so important in Atlanta is because Atlanta is #1 for income inequality based on race. And so the gap between the have and have-nots in our city is the largest. And if you're born in poverty in Atlanta, the city of Atlanta, where I was born and raised in, as well as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., if you're born in poverty here, you have a 4% chance of making it out.
Ooh, lot to digest there and process, which just means that your fingerprints on a lot, and that there's a lot of work to be done. Let me go right into this right now. It was going to come up at some point along the way, but I'm lucky enough to be in a town, in a city like Kansas City that has an incredible history of African American baseball. The Negro Leagues Baseball Museum is right here, founded by the legendary Buck O'Neil. The Monarchs were like the Yankees of the Negro Leagues, and some of the biggest names, from Satchel Paige to Jackie Robinson and many others, played here. And so we're lucky. I mean, we have that institution and the ability to tell those stories on a regular basis, just on our pregame shows for Kansas City Royals. When I look at when I grew up, and I think you and I are close in age, there were Black superstars in baseball everywhere you look, the greatest players in the game. I mean, you name it, right? From Dave Winfield to Ricky Henderson to Andre Dawson to Tim. I mean, we could go on for hours here. It's not the case anymore. And as you are helping with everything that you're doing, I'm just wondering why. Why has there been such a decline? This has been talked about a lot. And how do we change that? Because if we aren't getting the best of all people, the sport's not as good and people aren't as interested, right? I mean, it's representation. There's no way that the talent has declined in the Black community. Why are we not finding the next Dave Winfields out there?
Yeah, so I think there's 2 costs that has to be afforded. The obvious, which is the financial cost to play baseball, but then there's an emotional cost, and this is specifically for Black boys. When I was growing up, you as well, Dave Winfield, all these folks, recreation baseball was foundational for the development of boys. And summertime was the time that you could look forward to playing rec baseball. The financial cost was very small across the board, across the country. And so you played, and then, from a scouting standpoint, you had those bird dog scouts that were out there that were on the grind, and they had one job, and that was to look for players. Today's scouting can be such that it's really kind of pack scouting. And so, the group of people say, this is a good player, then all of a sudden everybody looks at it. So, I think the fact that recreational baseball has become a 4-letter word. Kids now don't get a chance to do it, and because it's like if you aren't playing travel ball, I mean, you got kids that have never played baseball before in their life, and all of a sudden join a team, and they're traveling. And so, just people are looking at recreation baseball in a negative light. So we gotta reframe that, and that's actually something that my wife Kelly and I are working on right now that we'll be presenting later this year, because we gotta get recreation baseball back. And subsequently, when it comes down to the Black community, in addition to their not being recreation baseball for Black boys to develop, even in the workforce, there are very few internship opportunities for young Black adults to intern so that they can be gainfully employed. So that's the financial cost. The emotional cost, I'm gonna make this personally about me, and I can't speak for all Black people, but I know this is the case for thousands of Black boys. If you're Black and you don't have strong baseball in your community, and then you go and play on a predominantly white team to get the exposure and the resources that you need, unless you're middle class African American or upper class, and you're already living in an environment where you are around white people, if you're coming out of low income and poverty stricken communities like I did in Northwest Atlanta, you have to assimilate. You have to then play a different cultural style of baseball. And so emotionally, a lot of kids just don't have the capacity to assimilate. So, excuse my French, they just say to hell with baseball.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a financial cost and an emotional cost.
I mean, that's so interesting too, because I don't know. You tell me. I mean, the financial, if you put the right people together and make it important, you can get money for anything. I mean, that becomes a storytelling issue. That becomes a moving people to. So you can always find the money. Now, I'm not saying that's easy, but I think the emotional part to it, I don't know that everybody thinks about that as much. I just, as you were talking about this, I was thinking about, in my role, being around the players every day, interviewing them, building trust. It's what I talk about in my keynotes and my speeches all around the country. I work really hard at, like, when you walk into a Major League Baseball clubhouse, you are going to get a quarter to a third of the room is going to be Latin American. And I think we've come a long way with that in terms of helping all of those young men try to assimilate into a new culture and a new language and, new customs and all of that, while getting better at embracing who they are. I don't know that we're doing that as much for the Black community anymore. First off, again, the numbers, I walk into any clubhouse and there may be one African American, maybe none, maybe two, maybe three, it depends. But there's not a whole lot of attention going on with that. And so I just wonder if you could expand a little bit on the emotional piece to it. Are we giving kids, as they're coming up, the right support to be baseball players?
No. And that's the reason why for LEAD, which stands for Launch, Expose, Advise, Direct, we have outstanding programming, and it's year round, as there's a phased approach, but it is culturally relevant. I do believe that there is a Black way to play baseball. I believe there's a white way to play baseball. And then there is a right way to play baseball. And that right way oftentimes is based on who's in charge. And so the right way is something that shows respect for everybody involved. I mean, when I think about being a kid and playing in Atlanta, it was loud, the parents and the fans. In fact, when I grew up playing in Atlanta, in Southwest Atlanta, on a regular basis, I would actually have a game as a child. The wife of the late Martin Luther King Jr., Coretta Scott King, would be at our games. Congressman John Lewis, Hosea Williams, Ralph David Abernathy, Andrew Young. I mean, these are civil rights giants. They lived in the community. Hank Aaron lived in the community, and it was always loud. And so when I started thinking about my Black cultural baseball experience as a child, it was loud. It was we we had a style of play that, yes, there's a fundamental way to field a ground ball, but there was some flash to it. There was a level of bravado from our coaches as well as the players. And then when I started playing on my predominantly white team travel, it was a sense of you have to wear your uniform like this. It can't be baggy. The shirt's got to be tucked in a certain way. With 2 strikes, you got to choke up on the bat and make sacrifices for the team. And I get all of that, but from a black standpoint, it was,
Yep.
Here's your role, here's your skill set. We're trusting you that with 2 strikes, you can still take an aggressive swing and get things done. You can steal a base and all this kind of stuff. So I think there just needs to be a real conversation around there are different ways of playing, and we got to make it culturally relevant so that black boys can say, this game is for me. I'm going to be protected. I'm going to be given the benefit of the doubt, respected and trusted.
Yeah, I mean, I got news for you too. I mean, the baseball world overall, it's getting a little bit better, but I mean, the baseball world overall is stuck in the past. I mean, it's just a traditional white man sport. Not that only white men have played it. Again, I'll go back to the Negro League, some of the greatest players in the history of the world. And by the way, CJ, they were playing it exactly the way that you're describing it. They were playing it in a way that had bravado. They were playing it in a way that, was their style, and it was embraced. And what I see, I'm bringing this up because when I watch the game today, no matter who is watching, my kids are more likely to get excited about it when they see personality, when they see whatever translates on the TikTok and viral moments and the quick stuff like that. That's what sells right now, which, oh, by the way, now we're saying it's okay to pound the chest and to flip the bat and to show some of that bravado you're talking about. So suddenly what was not allowed, the Latin community, don't pound your chest. The black community, play the game the way we say you're supposed to play it, that things are changing a little bit. And I wonder your perspective on that, because to me, it feels like the younger generation, regardless of color, says, I want to be entertained. Bring it on. We don't need to do things the way they were always done before.
Absolutely. And from a business standpoint, it's more profitable.
Yes.
I know here in Atlanta, Ronald Acuna, Albies, even with guys like Austin Riley and Matt Olson, even with their walkout songs, their song choices, there are black kids that have gone to games with me that look forward to going back just because they want to be able to hear the songs. And so at the end of the day, for our president and CEO, Derek Schiller with the Atlanta Braves, ticket sales is a very important metric. And so when I think about, growing the game, it's funny because this past Super Bowl that we had, that was some people said that it was a Super Bowl with an Usher performance, but then some people said that it was an Usher concert with a football game. And so, all of these things, when you start tying in athletics and the arts, is very important. But again, for us with Lead Center for Youth, with our year-round programming for Black boys, grades 3rd through 12th grade, and we also just added tennis for girls 3rd through 5th. We want to create a culturally relevant environment that helps them to develop the social emotional learning capacities, which will allow them to be successful in life. Things like positive identity, social capital, social skills, self-management, academic self-efficacy. And so when you start to use baseball as a vehicle or tennis as a vehicle for Black youth, especially that are coming from disenfranchised communities, it really allows them to dream and show up in the presence of people, specifically with white people, that will say, this young man or this young woman is confident, because I do have white friends that are in the baseball industry, whether it's scouts and so on, that they do not want to bring in a black player that lacks confidence, because you take Jackie Robinson, for instance. He was not short of confidence. I mean, he definitely went through struggle, but in order to last, you have to make sure that you believe in yourself, and that requires training and programming, and that's what we do at Lead Center for Youth.
All right, let's talk more about everything you're doing, and I'm looking at some of the numbers that we got from you guys of young men who complete Lead's ambassador program. 100% graduation rate from high school, 93% enrolling in college, 90% receiving college scholarship opportunities, 14% entering the military or the workforce. You can't, I mean, nobody can touch those numbers. I mean, I know you always want to get even better and better and better. You can't with the high school rate at 100%. That's pretty powerful stuff, CJ. So I mean, I think the question I have is, one, how did you get there? And what's that momentum like when you start getting it going? I know there's always going to be more work to do, and we'll talk about some of what you've got coming up. But what was the process like to get there? Because I know it didn't start there.
Yeah, the process is my life. When we stay in Conway, like I said, a white man convicted me. I had other plans of doing other things, and really discovered my life purpose through that convicting moment. And then we just decided, we're going to design this programming around my life, everything that I experienced, but then even also the things that I wish I would have experienced. And so my life was always full of athletics, academics, and the arts. And so, we really feel like if we do a good job of identifying the youth that are the most vulnerable in our city, and we scout out Black boys that are underperforming in grades, attendance, and behavior, and making sure that they have a healthy dosage of touch points. And the mentorship piece is very important, but the sponsorship piece is even more important. So even right now, we have an ambassador that has national security clearance. We have several ambassadors that are working in corporate America. We have one young man that has come through our program, Will Benson, who's in the major leagues for the Cincinnati Reds, the first within our 17-year existence. And so, it's all about having the right methodology, the method of doing things. Even when I think about Kansas City, we appreciate you all sending Mr. John Sherholtz our way and helping us develop the methodology that has allowed us to become this amazing franchise with the Atlanta Braves. But that's the key. And I'll just say, lastly, to that point, although we are proud of those statistics when it comes down to graduation rates, we made a decision to say, you know what? We aren't tracking the right things. We aren't a school. Schools have a responsibility to graduate kids, but typically when you're looking at kids that are coming from disenfranchised and disadvantaged communities, what they're lacking is a high level of those social emotional learning capacities that I was talking about: academic self-efficacy, positive identity, social skills, self-management. And so there's data that we use and track to prove that we are the MVP of SBYD, which is Sports-Based Youth Development. And we've been around for 17 years. We've had over 5,500 boys come through our program, and we spent $20 million over those 17 years to prove that Black boys do want to play baseball. 94% of our boys have shown gains in at least 3 social emotional learning capacities. And if I can show gains in those, then things like graduate from high school and so on and so forth are going to follow.
Less focus on, okay, you got to get this grade, you got to get that grade. More focus on the emotional, the social, which leads to those grades, those good results, I think is what I'm getting here, right? I mean, you're focusing on that piece of it more than anything.
Absolutely. I mean, you take a guy like Peter Alonso, who I had an opportunity to coach, and Kyle Lewis. Both of them in their respective leagues were the rookies of the year. So in my development with them was to say, hey, listen, all right, we're not going to worry about getting hits, and we're not going to worry about getting home runs. So here's the the KPIs, the key performance indicators that will lead to that. Number one, if I can get loaded on time 90% of the time, so if I'm on time 90% of the time, I'm on tempo 90% of the time, and I'm tracking pitches effectively 80% of the time, and I learn how to repeat my approach 70% of the time, I'm going to hit the ball hard 50% of the time. And if I can do that, I can expect to get a hit 30% of the time. And if I can get a hit 30% of the time with that much power, I can expect to hit a home run 10% of the time. So now all I got to do is say, I need to just be healthy enough to get 500 at bats. And here's what I can expect to do. So it's the key performance indicators that is most valuable. And if you don't have those KPIs and the proper programming, then you're stressing yourself out because you're only focusing on getting hits and home runs.
Okay, I want to talk to you a little bit about what you guys are working on right now. Explain a little bit more. SBYD, becoming certified sports-based youth development practitioners. I think that, you know, anybody that is listening to this that has kids that have been in travel ball or they know people, I mean, like, the world's crazy with all this stuff right now. Tell me what you guys are working on.
Yeah, so, starting out, travel ball is an amazing thing, and its competitor is sports-based youth development, which focuses on removing the barriers for marginalized youth so that they can have access to the sport and to be able to develop those social emotional learning capacities that are afforded from travel ball. Our daughters, Mackenzie and McKenna, play tennis, and they've been playing travel tennis all their lives. So you got to have 4 to 5 rackets. You need to have an abundance of shoes. You need to be able to have all these different things. Well, if you are a Black girl in the inner city of Atlanta and you are growing up in poverty, there's no way you can compete unless you have all those things. So an SBYD approach is a trauma-informed approach that addresses that. The certification process is so important because around the world, Kelly and I, through the work that we do with L.E.A.D, are recognized as the MVP of SBYD. And so several people within communities in Atlanta, America, and across the world have asked us, have you thought about starting volleyball? Have you thought about being in South Carolina? Have you thought about being in South Africa? And so our response to that is rather than us trying to go and set up the programming there, why don't we have the world come to Atlanta to be trained by us and our methodology? And then that way they can take that to their space. So you think about, this is a plug to iPhone, that iOS system. If you have an iPhone and you don't have the iOS system, then basically you have a paperweight. So we're really excited about that, and just making sure that, for these millions of youth that are marginalized, and that's marginalized based on race, gender, religion, whatever it is, sexuality, making sure that they can have a healthy sports experience, because I just do not think that you can actually have a thriving community if children aren't playing sports. And particularly, I want them playing baseball, which is America's favorite pastime.
Yeah, and we need to keep it there too. I mean, so easy to throw that label of America's pastime out. I'm not accusing you of doing that. I do it myself all the time too. But it's like, if we don't pay attention to it, if we don't help nurture it, then we're going to go backwards. And in some ways, again, we already have. There's so much room for growth here. 2 final questions before I get to my baseball themed questions. One, I'm just curious about you and you getting here, because the odds were, at least in the very beginning, were probably stacked against you too. And I look at your story, and I know there's a major influence with your grandparents, but how much your story comes into play. Look, these kids now, they look at all of us as the old guys. Maybe they don't look at you as the old guy. I don't know, but they look at me as the old guy, and then I wasn't the old guy once. But they don't always know our stories and all of that. I'm curious how much your story coming up and making it resonates with them.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and I keep that at the forefront. Let me just start from some amazing things that's happening to me right now, what I dream about, and then I'll go backwards and just I'll make it succinct. So right now I'm 47, and my prayer is that by the time I'm 50 years old, I'm on the cover of Time magazine. Now, success is what you get. Significance is how you use your success to serve others. And so I really want my people, African-American people, to be able to embrace the sport of baseball the way it was done in the Negro Leagues, to help us become major league citizens. The Negro Leagues was much more than just playing baseball.
Right.
And so significance is something that is very important. And along with my passion and my story, that positions me to be able to level the playing field, not only for Blacks in baseball, but Blacks in life. I had the opportunity to model for the statue of Hank Aaron that's at Truist Park. So the statue is my body and it's his head. And so shout out to Derek Schiller and the leadership in the Braves for blessing me with that ability to be connected to Hank Aaron through perpetuity. November 20th in Atlanta is CJ Stewart Day and L.E.A.D Day through perpetuity. And we have three murals of us in Atlanta. Backing up, I was born in 1976 at Grady Hospital to a 16-year-old mother. And my father was in my life and still is in my life. And if you were born at Grady Hospital, that meant two things. That meant you were Black and you were poor. And even now, Zone 1 Bankhead, where I was born and raised, is worse now than it was back then. My very first baseball coach was Emmett Johnson Sr., who was the chairman of the Atlanta Public Schools Board of Education. When I was 8 years old in 1984, I had this dream of playing professionally for the Cubs, and I was crazy enough to tell that to T.J. Wilson when I was a ninth grader at Westlake High School. He was an Atlanta Police Department officer. Within a month, I got my first batting lesson from Denny Pritchett in Forsyth County. Within a month of that, I had my first tryout with the Chicago Cubs at 14 years old. Got drafted twice by the Cubs, played for the Cubs. And then along the way, by the time I was 16, I started playing travel ball for the Chico Renfro All-Stars, and our head coach was Derek Stafford. So I'm just going to use those three names, but there are several other people. I was Black and poor, but my first baseball coach was one of the most powerful people in Atlanta. He was the chairman of the Atlanta Public Schools Board of Education. So a Black kid has got access to that kind of social capital. And then I get T.J. Wilson, and then I get Derek Stafford, who just recently retired as one of the top NBA referees. So my story is around making sure that Black boys are saying yes to the right mentors that have the capacity to sponsor them.
So it's there, but most kids don't have the fortune that you did in meeting the right people. And so I know that's so much of what you're doing. I got to think, CJ, for you and your wife as well. I mean, to wake up with purpose every day, there's nothing better. Like most people struggle to find their purpose. And that's what guys like me try to do to inspire and motivate when I go around. I can go and talk to people that are successful in the business world or just trying to find a way to make it. And they're oftentimes without a purpose. They haven't found that yet. It's got to be such a blessing to wake up every single day knowing that you've got this massive purpose.
Absolutely. And I mean, again, part of that journey is staying Conway. I was able to get to this point because of that conviction. So my critical change construct, and that's a part of the certification, is to make sure that kids get access to people like me. And so what I'm telling coaches is, whether you're man, woman, Black, white, if you don't know your life purpose, you don't need to be coaching. And we can find it out by, number one, answering the question at the very least 40 days. Ask yourself, what do you worry about? What do you cry about? What do you dream about? And what brings you joy? Getting settled in on that, because hurting people hurt people. So if I don't know my purpose and I'm hurting, then I'm going to be hurting kids. But then I'll just say lastly, and these are all some of the things that will come out in that certification process to make sure that kids are getting the right people, because we all are going to be our best if we know our purpose. But my critical change construct everything starts with conviction, which is the heart. Then there's a connection with the head. And then there's a heartfelt promise where we get consensus. And then there's collaboration where we have the hands. So until coaches can get convicted, then we get connected to our purpose. Then we can make a heartfelt promise. And then we can start to collaborate, starting to actually bring in kids. So it's going to be, I think, revolutionary how we certify these coaches, whether they played baseball or not, and then how we start to bring back the heart of baseball and the heart of our country, which is recreation baseball.
It's great stuff. Every bit of it. Let's go to the baseball themed questions. I'm not asking you about back in your playing days, you're a home run, but in all the work that you're doing, professionally speaking, what's the biggest home run that you've hit?
Oh, well, let me just say personally, the biggest home run was marrying my wife, Kelly.
Of course.
Man, like that is, I still think about that even to this day. I would be on a totally different path. I think the biggest home run I've hit is answering the convicting call that Stan had and starting L.E.A.D. I mean, if I didn't do that, I think I would be somewhere in baseball making a whole lot of money, but not making a real difference. And so I could have very easily have been offended by Stan and stayed the path and did some other things, continued to develop major league players. And Lord knows I enjoyed that process, and I still have several kids. But a calling from God is something that we cannot disobey. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's my biggest home run.
It's a great one. It's bigger than what you would have thought would have been the home run. It's amazing when that happens too, when you realize there's something bigger, so much bigger out there. You mentioned a little bit early in the interview a swing and a miss. How about a swing and a miss and what you learned from it?
Oh man, a swing and a miss. I mean, I think a swing and a miss was actually my playing career. I mean, I think that I failed to take it as seriously as I should have. I didn't do a good job of preparing. I mean, when it came down to the proper rest, the proper eating, the proper stretching, I mean, it was just, and that's why I really believe it's so important to understand the difference between talent, habits, and skills. Oftentimes, we look at talent and we think it's the ceiling, but it's really the floor. Talent is what you do well. Habits is what you do well repeatedly without thought, and skills is what you do well repeatedly without thought while under stress. And so when the stress tests came, it made me realize that, hey, I've been coasting this way because of talent. And so now with the work that I do as a coach, I mean, I have a relentless pursuit of excellence, and I can't swing and miss on this the way that I did in my professional playing career.
And with maturity and experience and growth and age, those swings and misses, just you brush them off. They're just a little something, and you move on because you've learned. You got a better grasp of this stuff right now. We all do, and so. I don't know. To me, the swings and misses aren't as drastic as they were when I was younger, and that I don't even notice them half the time because I just move on to the next pitch, so to speak. My favorite question in terms of baseball themes is small ball. It's really what I've created. The little things every day. I don't need to explain to you what small ball is in baseball, but I always tell people the bunts aren't sexy. The base stealing, the hit and run, all that stuff's not sexy. The home run is sexy. But to me, small ball is what makes you successful in life. What are the little things as you continue this journey with L.E.A.D that lead to success? What is small ball for L.E.A.D?
So when I think about success, it is one, don't be stupid. Stupidity is knowing the right thing to do, but not doing it. So all the things that I'm supposed to be doing, I need to be doing it. And struggling is better than being stupid. To struggle is to be making mistakes out of ignorance. And the bridge between stupidity and struggle is humility, not thinking less than myself, but thinking of others more than myself. And so I have to really discipline myself in order to be successful. And so discipline is doing the right things even when I don't want to do it. So I hated as a child having to make my bed every day. When I get up in the morning, I make my bed. I hate doing it, but that is helping me develop my discipline muscle. I write down one thing that I've learned every day, and I've been doing that now for over 12 years. I also do a voiceover journal every day. And these are all things I don't want to do. I also have become an avid runner, something that I hated doing as a child. So I have a long list of things that I don't like doing that I do that allows me to show up with excellence, which means to meet expectations. So when the going gets tough and I have to meet an expectation, I've now developed this work ethic. So small ball for me, I make up my bed every day.
Mm. Really good stuff. I just, it's why I love that question so much, because everybody's got a little bit of a different perspective, and I've heard different variations, but that's definitely an answer I have not heard before, and just so interesting that you're tackling these things that maybe you don't like doing, but they're all making you better and more disciplined and more routine oriented. Some of the stuff that you talked about, maybe that you didn't have when you were younger, that maybe you wish you had done. So that's really good stuff. All right, CJ, 4 final questions as we round the bases. I'll start with number 1 here. You touched on what an honor it was. How much pressure was it filling in, so to speak, for Hank Aaron?
It was really emotional, but I just really had to stay focused on why they wanted me to do it. And why they wanted me to do it is because they wanted there to be a connection to Black boys in the inner city of Atlanta through me and Mr. Aaron. I mean, the Braves moved from inner city of Atlanta to Cobb, which is more metro Atlanta. So I said, hey, listen, I've been chosen to do this. I need to do it. I need to embrace it, and I need to do it with confidence. So
what an honor. I mean, I can't think of a greater honor. It's absolutely unbelievable. All right, second question as we round the bases. I mean, you the influence and the roster of Diamond Director's players. I mean, these are big names: Jason Hayward, Dexter Fowler, Andrew Jones. You mentioned Pete Alonso, Kyle Lewis, a great up-and-comer, Andrew McCutchen. What does it mean to have names like that? I mean, I mentioned that the black stars in baseball, there just aren't as many as the past. There are black stars in baseball. I mean, we can make the argument that Mookie Betts is the best player in the game. He's certainly in the top, 5, top 3. So they're still out there. But what does it mean to have those guys?
The mission for Diamond Directors of the program they went through is to provide the blueprint of success for Diamond Sport athletes. And so what it means is excellence. They had expectations, and we did it with a methodology. I mean, I'm not batting 1,000 as far as developing major leaguers. Not everybody gets an opportunity to do it, but just even using Jason Hayward. I mean, I started with him when he was 13 years old. And I remember him saying, because he lived in Henry County, and I remember him saying that he realized that the halfway point between his house and my training facility was Turner Field. And I was just kind of like, oh, okay, yeah. And I remember driving to Florida one day, and I was leaving from our facility, and I said, because you got to go through Henry County, I said, I'm just going to check the mileage. It's halfway. So that level of consciousness. He also told me, he said, he's 13. He said, I want to hit a home run by the age of 21 at Turner Field for the Atlanta Braves. And so there's no way I can guarantee that or anybody else, but what I can guarantee is that we can have a methodology in place that allows us to continue to move forward. And that's what we're able to do. So that's what it means to me, to be able to just say, hey, God has really given me this earthly talent and the understanding of methodology and frameworks to get to success.
If I'm looking at this correctly, as you're saying that, I see that on April 5th, 2010, looks like his big league debut, he hit a home run, and 2010 would put him at, I think he was actually 20 still at that point. Is that,
yeah, he was 20.
Yeah. Unbelievable. That was his first game, right?
Yeah, very first game against the Cubs.
Unbelievable. A team that he would go on to play for as well. What an incredible story. All right, third question as we and one of the good guys in the game, one of the many good guys in the game. Third question as we round the bases. Who was your guy growing up? Jason Hayward and all those players that I just mentioned, they've become the guy for probably a lot of the kids that you've worked with? And shoot, now they're on the older end, by the way, and now it's the Ronald Acuñas. And who was your guy growing up?
Oh man, so many. But I think the name that really keeps popping up is when I was a kid in 1984, 8 years old, fall in love with the Cubs. I would watch the Cubs games in the daytime with my granddad and the Braves at night with my grandmother. And Gary Matthews, the Sarge.
Yes.
I would imitate him. I would go in the backyard, and for me, I was at Wrigley Field, and I would imitate him. And fast forwarding, when I started playing in the Cubs organization, he was my hitting coach. And several weeks ago, I was having a pretty rough day. It was pretty rough. And just out the blue, I got a call from Sarge, just simply checking in on me, just seeing how I was doing. It was pretty emotional, but I took it as a sign from God. But again, here I am living in Atlanta among a working class family and dreaming of playing for the Cubs, and I'm emulating Gary Matthews, and now Gary Matthews is a good friend of mine.
So cool. So awesome. I saw him. He doesn't know me from Adam, but I actually grew up outside of Philadelphia. Then we moved to Chicago. The only reason why I was not a Cubs fan, and I lived north, so it was all Cubs, was that at that point the Phillies and the Cubs were in the same division, and I was a punk 13-year-old kid. There's no way that I could root against my Phillies, so I became a White Sox fan out of spite, just to tick off all my Cubs friends. But now having been in the business as long as I have, I was just happy to see the Cubs win it in 16. Happy for my father-in-law, who grew up actually on the south side of Chicago, but a diehard Cubs fan. And so many of my friends, like it was such a cool thing. But I bumped into the Sarge in Philly this summer. They were doing a big reunion weekend, or something was going on there, and we were playing the Phillies for the weekend. And so it was like a big fan appreciation thing. And there's Sarge walking right by me. I'm like, I got to talk to this guy. I took a picture of him and all. I'm just totally geeking out on it. All right. Last question, my walk-off. I don't do this a lot because I feel like, people that win a lot of awards are humble. They don't like to talk about it. But I mean, CJ, when I look at the awards you've won, I'm not going to read off all of them, but just because some of the significance of these. I mean, the 2019 Brian Snitker Youth Coach of the Year Award, awesome. Brian Snitker is one of the best managers in baseball in the major leagues. 2021 Atlanta Magazine Top 500 Most Influential Black Atlantans. 2021 Core Magazine 100 Most Influential Blacks Today. I can go up and down the list, but 2021 Adidas honoring Black Excellence honoree, L.E.A.D getting recognition, its own shoe collaboration as a result. 2018 We as a People Henri, MLK's 50th anniversary award. It goes on, and then of course Hank Aaron with the statue. What are you most proud of? I know they're just awards, but we're talking about incredibly rich history. Incredibly powerful stuff down there in Atlanta. I mean, you've dropped names already like John Lewis and Martin Luther King and Hank Aaron. Not a lot of people get to drop those names. What are you most proud of?
I think that having a proclaimed day through perpetuity in my birth city of Atlanta, which is November 20th, and I share that day with L.E.A.D Day in Atlanta. It was so emotional. To be able to have that, to be a son of this city and have so many great people that were born in this city and have come to the city and have done great things. And, we celebrate it each year through service, like we do every single day. So the emotion of having that and having my city show me so much love. I mean, L.E.A.D is a love letter to the city, just saying thank you for all that it has done for me. So, I thought that was pretty cool, getting that from Councilman Michael Julian Bond, whose father, Julian Bond, was a civil rights leader as well. So I'm very proud of that.
It's all truly amazing stuff. I didn't even get a chance to ask you. It's okay that featured on the 2022 an episode of the Kelly Clarkson Show for the work that you're doing. That's got to give you a little bit of credibility, maybe with the kids. And again, the list goes on and on. I do want to encourage everybody a couple of things. One, check out CJ's got a Amazon best-selling book, L.E.A.D, A Story of Passion, Purpose, and Grit. So definitely encourage you to check that out. And then a couple of websites, we'll have them in the show notes as well. LEADcenterforyouth.org, LEADcenterforyouth.org, and imcjstewart.com. And of course, he's on social media and all of that stuff. But check out those websites, see what they're doing. CJ, continued great work, and I hope to catch up with you at the end of the baseball season when the Royals wrap up the regular season. Seems like so far away in September in Atlanta. Thanks so much for spending time today on Rounding the Bases.
Yeah, and thank you for amplifying my voice and allowing folks to understand the work that we're doing. And we appreciate you so much, Joe.
It's around the bases. Everybody knows Joe Goldberg.